Very good morning. We are live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India, India's voice to the world. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Coming up in the next 30 minutes. India's lunar lander module Vikram inches towards moon. Second and final deep boosting operation successfully completed. Power descent on surface of moon expected to commence on 23rd August. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi says India's economy shines as a beacon of hope in these challenging times. Says with robust growth and resilient spirit, future looks promising. Spain and England, two European heavyweights to play the Women's World Cup final on Sunday. The second and final deboosting operation of India's moon mission Chandrayaan-3 successfully completed on Sunday morning as scientists at India's space agency ISRO closely monitored the critical phase ahead of the spacecraft's landing on the lunar surface on Wednesday. The space agency said the lander Vikram has placed itself in an orbit where the closest point to the moon is 25 kilometers and the farthest is 134 kilometers. It is from this orbit that it will try a soft landing in the unexplored south polar region of the moon on Wednesday. The lander Vikram has been descending in the moon's orbit in an automated mode. It has been deciding on its own how to go about its functions. A successful moon landing will make India the historic fourth country to have achieved this feat. Chandrayaan-3 was launched into space by the LVM-3 rocket from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in southern Indian city of Sriharikota on July 14th. It entered the lunar orbit on August 5th. All right, moving on to Niger now, as efforts are on to re-establish the civilian rule in the country. A delegation from West African bloc ECOWAS met with deposed President Mohamed Bazoum and co-leader General Abdurrahman Tiani in the capital Niamey on Saturday. The delegation also held talks with the junta in an attempt to pursue diplomatic ways to reverse the coup. Earlier, the delegation was received by junta-appointed Prime Minister at the airport. Moreover, Niger junta leader Abdurrahman Tiani also conducted a nationwide televised address on Saturday and said that neither coup leaders nor the Nigerian people want war.
Nigerians, my dear compatriots, I hereby reaffirm that our ambition is not to seize power. I also reaffirm our readiness to engage in any dialogue, as long as it takes into account the orientation desired by the proud and resilient people of Niger. Any coercive and ignorant approach to the quest for sovereignty, security and good governance, clearly expressed by the population, amount to ignoring the deep-rooted dynamics at work in Sahelian's country, abandoned to their own fate for over 10 years by the very people who, instead of helping them fight the evil that beast them, now want to attack them today.
West Africa's main bloc has agreed on a D-Day for possible military intervention to restore democracy in Niger after generals toppled and detained President Mohamed Bazoum last month. The Economic Community of West African States says its members have agreed to activate a standby force as a last resort if diplomatic efforts fail. DD India correspondent Isaac Lukondo from Dar es Salaam has more to brief you about the updates coming straight from Niger.
West African defense chiefs say they've ironed out details of a potential military operation to restore constitutional rule in Niger. The military junta there has so far defied calls from the United Nations, ECOWAS and others to reinstate ousted President Mohamed Bazoum to power. Leaders of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, say they anticipate that a final diplomatic push could yield results. If it fails, a planned military intervention in Niger now has the backing of at least 11 of ECOWAS's 15 member states ready to contribute to a joint force. However, the bloc is likely to face legal and political hurdles in its endeavor, including the need for approval from legislative bodies of participating states. With 6 coups in the last 3 years, ECOWAS has had little success in stemming the region's many coups. ECOWAS and the international community saw the government overthrow in Niger as one too many. The bloc hopes that the threat of a military invasion, severe economic and travel sanctions will help restore order to an already volatile region. Isaac Lukando in Dar es Salaam, reporting for DD India.
Now, South Africa is all set to host the 15th edition of the BRICS Summit in Johannesburg beginning Tuesday. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be attending the summit meeting in person, as a report.
BRICS represents the group of major emerging world economies, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa. The theme of this year's summit is BRICS and Africa Partnership for Mutually Accelerated Growth, Sustainable Development and Inclusive Multilateralism. Prime Minister Narendra Modi would be representing India at the BRICS Leaders Summit. This visit of Prime Minister Modi to Johannesburg will be watched closely in diplomatic circles for 2 reasons. One, his interventions at the Leaders Summit here in Johannesburg, especially on how he proposes a greater role for developing countries in the global economic and political order, given that that is one of the key priorities of India of its G20 presidency, even as it prepares to hold the Leaders Summit next month in Delhi. The second would be the much talked about meeting between President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Modi, if that happens, because the 2 sides have not been able to resolve the flashpoints in eastern Ladakh, even at the 19th military commanders meeting. Prime Minister Modi will also engage with fellow world leaders from BRICS and invited countries. BRICS 2023 will take forward deliberations on key priority areas that include developing partnerships towards climate change initiatives, transforming education and skills development for future, unlocking opportunities through African Continental Free Trade Area, strengthening post-pandemic recovery and 2030 agenda on sustainable development goals, promoting multilateralism with meaningful participation of women in peace processes.
BRICS represents a partnership of leading emerging economies that are providing leadership and momentum to global growth and sustainable development, a vision for a multilateral world which is equal, just and creates space for the priorities of the global south.
The BRICS group accounts for more than 40% of the world population and about 26% of the global economy. Amritpal Singh and Shobhedu Ghosh reporting for DD India from Johannesburg.
And Taiwan is a self-governing democracy that Beijing says is part of People's Republic of China to be united with the mainland by force if necessary. These latest military exercises are seen as a response to the trilateral summit between the leaders of America, Japan and South Korea, and 2 brief stopovers in the US by Taiwan's Vice President while traveling to and from Paraguay, where he attended a presidential inauguration. DD India's Andrew Wood reports from Hong Kong.
President Xi Jinping has given the People's Liberation Army, the military, a target of 2030 to be ready to invade Taiwan militarily, if necessary, in order to unite Taiwan with the mainland of China. Now, there's still 7 years to go. The military at the moment really doesn't have the capacity to be able to do that. It could certainly make a good go, probably, of attacking Taiwan if necessary, but the idea of an amphibious invasion across at least 100 kilometers of sea is still well beyond the capabilities, probably, of the People's Liberation Army. So even if they do build up the armaments, the ships, the amphibious assault vessels and so on, ready for 2030, they've still got to practice an awful lot in order to learn about fighting in such a way. Remember, the People's Liberation Army has not really fought a war. It hasn't got a lot of combat experience. China likes to point out that it hasn't fought a war since 1979, and that was against Vietnam, and it was actually over the South China Sea, and Vietnam beat China. China doesn't like to remember that bit. So we don't know how good the armed forces would be if they tried to invade Taiwan. All we know is that they've got to do an awful lot of practice. And it's quite a good idea to sort of say that this practice, these exercises around Taiwan, preparing for an invasion, or perhaps more likely a blockade, by saying that this was a way of warning Taiwan whenever Taiwan does something that that Beijing disapproves of, like William Lai visiting the United States on his way to and from Paraguay. Then it just keeps this in the mind of both the Chinese people to show that the government is serious about its promise that it wants to unify Taiwan with the mainland by force if necessary, and also keeps Taiwan on its feet as well. Sometimes the idea might be just to keep running these exercises. The longer and the more frequently that they're run, then the more that Taiwan is tired and exhausted by the whole process and may just even politically give in at some point in the future. Andrew Wood in Hong Kong, reporting for DD India.
Now let's take a look at other stories making news today. Brazilian protesters placed 14 coffins on a beach in Brazil to represent the bodies of children killed in police raids in Rio de Janeiro on Saturday. Joint police operations against drugs in various cities of Brazil has left more than 40 people dead in first week of August. Pakistani opposition party leader Shah Mahmood Qureshi has been detained by authorities. Specific reason for the detention of Qureshi was not immediately clear. Party spokesman Zulfi Bukhari told media. PTI party chairman Imran Khan is currently jailed for 3 years after being convicted on graft charges and is barred from contesting any election for 5 years. Days after the assassination of presidential candidate Fernando Villavicencio, and another shootout broke out on Saturday near a restaurant where another presidential candidate, Otto Sonnenholzner, was eating with his family. According to the police, the violence was not related to him. Ecuadorians head to the polls on Sunday to elect a new president and legislature after a campaign clouded by the assassination of anti-corruption candidate Fernando Villavicencio 10 days ago. The occupied West Bank witnessed another episode of violence when 2 Israeli civilians lost their lives in a suspected shooting attack. As the details of this tragedy unfolded, the army statement tragically announced the loss of 2 civilian lives. The 2 victims, a father and son, were shot at close range at a car wash in the Palestinian village of Huwara. Alright, we'll slip into a very short break, but still to come on this edition of DD India Live. Russian missiles struck a central square in the historic northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv. 7 killed, 144 wounded. And thousands in Israel protest Netanyahu's judicial overhaul for 33rd week. Guatemalans get up for Run of 4 dominated by call to end corruption.
PM Anthony Albanese welcomed Prime Minister Narendra Modi into the Sydney Stadium, saying PM Modi is the boss.
I don't think that Kudos Stadium had ever seen anything quite like it.
What is your assessment of India's G20 presidency this year?
Australia has said from the outset that we strongly support India's G20 presidency.
The Indian diplomats posted there have been threatened. Indians have been attacked. The honorary Indian consulate in Brisbane has been targeted.
We support India's sovereignty 100%.
Australia is hosting the Malabar exercise for the first time.
We are working towards greater interoperability, which is a key pillar of making the Indo-Pacific a safer and more resilient region.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. Updates from the Russia-Ukraine war as 7 people, including a 6-year-old girl, were killed, 144 wounded and 41 were in hospital after a Russian missile struck a central square in the historic northern Ukrainian city of Chernihiv on Saturday. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said of the 144 people injured, 15 were children. Zelensky said the strike on Chernihiv, a city of leafy boulevards and centuries-old churches about 145 kilometers north of Kiev, coincided with the Orthodox holiday of the Feast of the Transfiguration of the Lord. Debris was scattered across the square in front of the damaged theatre and surrounding buildings where parked vehicles were heavily damaged. Russia has attacked Ukrainian cities far from the front line with missiles and drones as part of the full-scale invasion that began in February 2022. Now, tens of thousands of Israelis returned to the streets of Tel Aviv to protest against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's planned judicial overhaul for the 33rd week in a row. Protesters carried banners which read in Hebrew, "You sit in the back," a reference to fears of religious gender segregation. It follows an incident last week in which a teenage girl was told to sit at the back of the bus after being told that she was immodestly dressed. Israel's Supreme Court began hearing on Thursday, the first in a series of appeals linked to a judicial overhaul undertaken by Benjamin Netanyahu and his Hard-Right coalition. This week, women's rights have been in the spotlight as questions of gender segregation and discrimination have been raised both amongst the public and politicians. Latin American country of Guatemala has been preparing for Sunday's presidential runoff election amid fears of election meddling. Voters said they were hoping for calm on election day in the Central American country and that the winner would end corruption, which they see as holding the country back. The frontrunner is Bernardo Arevalo, a reformist candidate who promised to revive a stalled anti-corruption movement and reverse democratic backsliding if he wins. Arevalo of the similar party holds a double-digit lead in polls over his opponent, former First Lady Sandra Torres. There were calls for a recount when he finished in second place in June's first round. A prosecutor then persuaded a court to suspend Arevalo's party, threatening to sideline his bid. Guatemala's top court later reversed the ban. Guatemalan President Alejandro Giammattei earlier said he would work to ensure an orderly transition of power to whomever voters elect. Updates from the weather front now. As far as fires in Canada's western province of British Columbia intensified further on Saturday, doubling the number of people under an evacuation order to 35,000 from a day earlier, as authorities warned of difficult days ahead. The province declared a state of emergency on Friday to access temporary authoritative powers to tackle fire-related risk, as out-of-control fires ripped through interior British Columbia and partially shut down some sections of a key transit route between the Pacific coast and the rest of Western Canada and destroyed many properties. Officials said the province is in dire need of shelter for evacuees and firefighters and ordered a ban on non-essential travel to make more temporary accommodation available. British Columbia had experienced strong winds and dry lightning in the past few days due to a cold mass of air interacting with hot air built up in the sultry summer. That intensified existing forest fires and ignited new ones. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau convened a meeting of key ministers and senior officials on Saturday to discuss wildfires. The Incident Response Group, which met for the second time this week, agreed to make additional resources available to both British Columbia and the Northwest Territories. And the northern Canadian city of Yellowknife evacuated most of its roughly 20,000 residents due to a large approaching blaze. People left their homes and property behind to seek refuge in neighboring provinces due to the threat of creeping fire, cutting off land exits and potentially doing worse harm. Residents and tourists drove away on roads flanked by fire and smoke, while local and federal authorities flew out some others. The massive blaze threatening Yellowknife, the Northwest Territories' capital city, made little headway on Friday as firefighters held it back, but strong winds could still blow the blaze towards the city and it could reach the outskirts this weekend, the territory's fire service has cautioned. Air quality concerns grow in Spain as wildfires continue to chew in the region. Authorities say more than 26,000 people have been evacuated and up to 11 towns are being affected. The firefighters battles to bring the wildfire under control, which was threatening residential areas. Europe is battling the effects of scorching weather, with July being the hottest month on record. Now in US, wildfires in the island of Maui in Hawaii have been brought under control after days of causing widespread devastation. The search and rescue teams with dogs and heavy equipment have been working tirelessly to search for victims in the aftermath of wildfires that scorched Maui. Till now, 111 people have been confirmed dead. US President Joe Biden this week authorized additional federal support for Hawaii in the wake of deadly wildfires that devastated the state this month. Now, parts of Mexico face a severe hurricane impact as it barreled north. The U.S. government agency warns of life-threatening flooding likely to lash in the California peninsula and U.S. southwest. Dangerous rains remain a major concern, with up to 10 inches of rainfall expected in some regions of Baja California and California. Now let's take a look at other stories making news today in India. 9 soldiers were died and 1 was critically injured when an army vehicle plunged into a gorge in Ladakh's Leh district on Saturday. Officials say the vehicle was moving as part of a convoy from Leh to Neomate when it skidded off the road and rolled down a gorge near Kyari in southern Ladakh around 6 p.m. The Government of India imposed a 40% duty on export of onions to control price rise and improve supplies in the domestic market. The Finance Ministry, in a notification, imposed the export duty till 31st December this year. The ministry said the duty is applicable immediately. Union Home Minister Amit Shah on Sunday will present the Madhya Pradesh government's report card and address the BJP's working committee meeting in Gwalior. Amit Shah will attend an event in Bhopal where he will release the Shivraj Singh Chauhan government's report card. Thereafter, he will leave for Gwalior, where he will chair and address a working committee meeting. He will also launch the Garib Kalyan Mahabhiyan in Bhopal as part of its exercise to reach out to people across the state about its government's various welfare measures. Building a more resilient, equitable, sustainable and inclusive healthcare system was the resolve taken by G20 countries at the health ministers' meeting that concluded in Gandhinagar on Saturday evening. The meeting held under India's G20 presidency saw countries unanimously adopt the outcome document, a 25-point document that reaffirmed the commitment of G20 countries to continue strengthening the global healthcare architecture. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi shared a business news portal report showing India's economy in a positive light. Sharing the report, Prime Minister Modi praised Indian economy and said that India's economy shines as a beacon of hope in these challenging times. He also called upon everyone to keep up this momentum and ensure prosperity for 140 crore Indians. The report further stated that India has seized population demographic ground from China, where India's youth population is more than that is advantageous. The report also quoted International Monetary Fund and said that India is the 5th largest economy after US, China, Japan and Germany. and it will overtake both Japan and Germany to claim third spot in 2027. And in sports, get ready for an epic showdown in FIFA Women's World Cup final on Sunday. La Roja and the Lionesses, two powerhouse European teams, prepare to clash in Sydney. Spain have notched up an eye-watering 17 goals in the tournament. The Lionesses have not lost a game in the tournament and notched up some impressive results.
Spain will take on England in the FIFA Women's World Cup final on Sunday. Spain and England contending for the first title. Both the teams have been impressive in the tournament, but Spain are obviously the surprise package, with their previous best record being a round of 16 finish. Reaching the final was historic. La Roja have built much confidence since the start and will likely to stick to their brand of football when they face England. Their ability to build from back and sophisticated passing pattern could break England's long ball style. England could become just the second team after Germany in 2003 and 2007 to win the Women's World Cup as reigning European champions. England have been in red-hot form, posting a flawless run of 6 wins in the competition.
I think, obviously, this is the biggest game, the one that you dream about, the one that means the most, but I feel like it will hit when we're in the tunnel and we're ready to walk out. And yeah, I think it's an incredible occasion. It's been an unbelievable tournament, and this is it. This is exactly where we want to be, and we can't wait.
Including friendlies, these two teams have faced off 11 times since 2007. The overall record is in England's favour, so they have upper hand by that metric. The Lionesses also won most recent meeting between the two sides, a close affair in a Euro 2022 quarter-final which went to extra time. Sports Desk, DD India.
Our Pragyanand continued his impressive streak, securing a significant draw against world number 2 Fabiano Caruana. The draw was a psychological win for him. This happened in the first game of the semi-final match in the FIDE World Cup in Baku in Azerbaijan on Saturday. Pragyanand, despite playing with a pawn less after the 41st move, was equal to the challenge. Caruana tested Pragyanand's understanding of the position, which was a theoretical draw. The players clash again on Sunday in the classical time control, with Pragyanand playing with white pieces. Alright, that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Abhishek Mahajan. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India.